Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening,
Hello.
and welcome to Experiencer Interviews, a YouTube channel created as a portal for experiencers to tell their amazing life stories. Experiencers are people that live through amazing out-of-this-world events regarding the paranormal, UFOs, and extraterrestrial contact. And today we have the pleasure of having with us family experiencers. Vicky Crew Fuller, born in 1959 in Wetumpka, Alabama, has always been in tune with the strange and the weird. Her big mama called her curious. As a small child of 7 years old, she would stare into space and repeat things such as, I am, who am I, who am I, and go into some kind of trance state and feel one with the universe. She lived in her grandmother's house in Wetumpka, and she was the only one who knew it was invaded by other beings. Later on, as things got worse, other people experienced things there as well. As a young adult, Vicky went through a wrenching divorce that left her wanting to end her life, but the vision of her twin baby boy's faces stopped her. She began at this time experiencing visitors to her in her sleep. They would visit her at night. Vicky sought help from a psychic who told her that very high level beings were meeting her at night, and she eagerly went with them. Vicky was also directed to see a shaman who introduced her to energies and healing. It was here that she met Mother Mary and her guardian angel, as well as other guides. Vicky wrote a book about her experiences and called it They Come When You're Alone, the Diary, available digitally on Amazon. Vicky currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and does not really communicate with other experiencers except for her family. Candace Skalberg was born in 1987 in Montgomery, Alabama. She grew up in a military family, spending her childhood in Guam and graduating in England. There are several contactees in her family that she grew up hearing stories about, but didn't take it seriously until events started happening to her in late 2011. She is a neuromuscular therapist that currently lives with her experiencer husband, John Skalberg, in Colorado Springs. John Skalberg was born in 1977 in Eugene, Oregon, has had an interest in UFOs and the unexplained since a young child. John has a number of strange and unexplained experiences throughout his life. After a near-death experience in 2001, he began to have many psi experiences. 2001 signified a dramatic change in his life, which sent him on a path to better understanding the UFO and extraterrestrial phenomenon. He and his wife, Candace, who also had many unexplained experiences in her life, currently live in Colorado and have been active in the experiencer community there for several years. So thanks for coming on, everyone. I'm really glad that you're on, and I'm pretty sure this live chat is going to be excellent, and a lot of people will have the chance to resonate with what you're going to say. For starters, I'd like to start with Vicky. Vicky, when did your experiences start?
Okay. So all my life, I've felt like I was not what you call normal. And even one of my earliest memories is sitting and trying to determine who I was. What was I? And I would sit there and stare into space and say, who am I? I am that I am. And I would start to feel like I'm not only this person, but other people. And it was like I could feel everyone else at the same time. And that's crazy right there. But I would tell my family stuff like that, and they would just like, mm-mm. And that's why my grandmother, she liked to be called Big Mama, why she would say, Vicky, you are curious. I also liked going out, staring at the stars, and just looking at, back then, this was in the country in Wetumpka, Alabama. I was able to see a lot of stars. And as far as experiences, I would feel things, say, in my grandmother's house where we had to live off and on. I, at night, would hear people walking up and down. I would hear what appeared to be someone cooking or frying chicken or clapping, and chairs rocking. And I would tell everyone, hey, there's something in this house. And they're like, no, that's silly, you're silly. But later on, other people started feeling it as I guess either it got stronger or they became more aware. I don't know. As a young adult, I had twin boys, and found out that my husband didn't want to be with me anymore, and it kind of sent me over the edge into depression. And I don't know, I found it interesting that all of a sudden I started dreaming these weird dreams of people coming to see me. I felt like they were small in stature. They didn't have any hair. And every night I would dream the same thing, and they were small. I thought they were children, and it was a distraction to me. Like, okay, am I going to dream this tonight? At least it was getting my mind off my personal issues. Mm-hmm. It was sort of like an entertainment, I guess. But it started scaring me because it kept going on and on and on. And then they kept doing the same things over and over, like guiding me. They wouldn't speak. They would guide me to a room, like, or appeared to be outside, like go into this cave, and they would point to it. And I didn't want to. Great fear would come on me, and I wouldn't. But other times, I guess they were speaking to me in my mind. They showed me like a ball. They said it looked like a crystal ball or something, and they said, look into the ball. And they were speaking with their mind. It'll take you anywhere you want, or let you see anytime, any place you want. So I said, okay, I want to see 1922 New York. And I saw swirling around, and then I could see it. It was like a movie picture inside this ball, and they were dressed like that. I was like, that is crazy. That's great. And they would show me I could move things with my mind if I wanted to. Like they brought this spider-looking thing, like it was on a stick. They said, just make it move with your mind. And I was able to do that, and I thought it was fun, you know. So every night I had these little adventures with these people, but I thought, am I losing it? Am I going crazy? And a friend of mine suggested I go see a psychic friend of hers, which is an older lady. And I had a list written down what I was going to ask her. Number one was, am I being visited at night? But before I could ask her anything, she looked at me and said, Vicky, who's visiting you? I said, what? How did you even know? And she went on to tell me that this ain't just somebody. These are upper beings. These are higher vibrational beings. And that when they come, I'm eager to go with them, and I go. She said, I'm out doing stuff every night. I'm like, wow. I mean, you're talking about somebody telling you something that you wondered about, and they're sitting there telling you it's happening. That it's just a weird feeling when that happened. I thought, life is more than my misery right now. This is really cool. And but so then time went on, and I was seeing other regular therapists to try to deal with the divorce. And someone then led me to see a shaman. His name is Glenn Cressman. He lives in Washington State. But this was the first time I'd ever met anyone like that. And he just scanned my body, and he said he could tell what energy was going on inside of me. I didn't know what he was talking about. He said that Mother Mary was entering into the room and wanted to see me. And I'm like, the Mother Mary? Because I had been just talking to her because she's a mom. I was a mom. I didn't know how to deal with 2 4-year-olds on my own. And here she's in the room. I didn't see anything, but I did feel a beautiful, warm feeling like of love. And then when Flynn came back in the room, he asked, how did it go? And I said, well, I just felt like I was at home, like somebody I knew. And he said, probably because she's from the heart and you are from the heart. And so, and then I continued to dream these beings coming. I started seeing physical things on my body, such as when I'd bathe my children, and then one night I noticed one of my sons had a sore or a burn mark on the bottom of his spine there. And then I saw the same exact thing on my other son. I said, that's crazy. Is this a rug burn? They couldn't have done that in the same spot. And it wasn't there yesterday. And so I said, what if I had it on my back? And I looked in the mirror, and there it was. So that scared me. And I said, that means I've got some physical evidence that something's actually going on here. But what could I do about it? There was nothing I could do. So there's fear involved in that. And you're wondering kind of about, I'm scared to go to sleep. And, but the psychic lady told me, why don't you ask them? Ask them. What is it they want? What are they trying to show you? So I determined, I said, okay, so I will. And it was 2 weeks later, here comes the dream again. And here they are again. And they're so excited. They're like, oh, they're so excited. And they're taking me down. We're going to take her to this cave. And I'm supposed to go in. And I take a deep breath and I make myself go into the cave. And when I do, it turns into some room, like a regular room. And I'm looking at the wall because someone's pointing at the wall. Go look at the wall. And I see 2 pictures on the wall. It seems to be a little boy and a little girl, and they have no hair. And I'm like, why am I seeing this? And then I hear a voice behind me say, if you turn around, you'll see me the way I am. And I turned around, and there was a beautiful being, female, and she had glowing golden light around her head, so bright that I couldn't see any hair, and all I could feel was the love coming from her to me, how much love there was. And I could feel like, I can't take this, I'm gonna faint. So I said, okay, I can't do it anymore. Thank you. And she put her hands on my head too. And I felt this energy coming from her hands into my entire body. And I could feel vibrating, buzzing sounds. And at that time, I physically woke up. And when I did, I had my hands crossed across my chest like that. And I heard a buzzing sound and knocking, binging, some beeping sounds. And that was wonderful. I can't begin to tell you what that felt like, that we are not alone. There are people out there that care for you, whether you think so or not. You can't see them, but they can see you, they feel you, they're with you all the time. And that's mainly what I learned from that.
Wow. Now, I think beforehand, before we started the recording, you were talking about phantom pregnancies.
Right. So before I was pregnant, I would dream a lot of the times I was pregnant, and that I was standing in a long line with other people, pregnant women, and we were waiting to see the doctor. And it wasn't a bad feeling, a scary feeling, but I'm like, oh, I've done this a lot. Okay, let's get this over with. And I felt like I've been pregnant a lot. In real life, I was not, to my knowledge. But I was examined many times by these people. And in real life, when I tried to get pregnant again, when I had a second marriage, I was trying to get pregnant again, and we weren't getting pregnant. So I went and got tested, and they said, Vicky, you don't have any more eggs. I said, what? That's crazy. I'm young. And I did not. They were all gone. So I think for sure that I have children out there, because I believe that they use my eggs.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, eggs don't generally disappear like that.
No.
No.
And but I don't get a bad feeling about it. I know for a fact that I would have agreed to something like that. I don't feel abused. I don't feel like a trauma experience at all. The anytime I've ever been with them, I felt a great love. Like, this is family to me. That's what it always felt like.
Now, you were talking about receiving training, with that spider thing.
Yes.
Do you know what that might possibly be? Or
I don't know, but I do remember trying to do it with my hands afterward. In another dream, I'm like trying to do my hands like that and make things move. And they said to me, no, there's more power in your eyes. They told me. Yeah. So wow. I started doing it with my eyes, and it worked.
Yeah, so there's a mental component to that. Really, that's amazing. Because when like sometimes the experiencers they get trained to pilot crafts, but they have to put their hands on an object to do so.
They were telling me I could do it with my eyes.
With your eyes, wow.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to your childhood, I think we talked beforehand that you had paranormal stuff. You were seeing visions. Really, was it like, were they ghosts or were they third eye visions? Because those two are completely different.
I think more of mine has always been the feeling of them. Like one time we moved into a house, we had to move into a rental. And as soon as I walked in, I did not feel good at all. I knew somebody was in there, something was in there. And the only time I could sleep is when I had recorded myself reading the Bible at 40, that back then you used tapes. And I would flip the tape. As long as that tape was playing, I could sleep. And then a synchronicity happened. I used to try to sell cable over the phone, telemarketing. And I actually called a lady who worked on the local TV. And she said, "How are you doing tonight? I don't need cable, but how are you?" I said, "I'm not good. There's something in my house." She said, "Oh, well, I'll be more than happy to come and help you with that and get it out." I'm like, "Huh?" This was a local celebrity. And I said, "Well, yes." So she and I made an appointment. She came to my house. She walked through the house and she started speaking in tongues. And I could feel this lift, like something left. And so that was wonderful. So ever since then, anytime I've gone into places, I know something's in there, and whether I want to be there or not.
So I guess your house was haunted?
My grandmother's was, and it still is. As a matter of fact, other people saw much worse than me. My aunt said that she would hear chains rattling in there, moaning, carrying on. Now, one night my cousin was there and she said she saw a little girl physically with no mouth standing there at the end of her bed.
No kidding.
And didn't Aunt Sunny see like a black mass in that back room off the kitchen?
I'm not sure. I know one night I was in the back room and Tracy was there, my sister, and she was asleep. I was reading the Bible. Tracy jumped up out of her bed, started trying to grab at me, like grab at my neck. I said, "Stop it, lay down." And just crazy stuff would happen. And my grandfather did kill himself in that room later too.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, where was the house, or where were you living?
This is in Wetumpka, Alabama.
Okay.
And the whole thing, when my grandmother passed, other people moved into the house. One of my family members just approached them out of the blue and said, she said, "My mother-in-law used to live here, and I was wondering how you liked the house." And they said, "I don't know, but this place is haunted." And they agreed. They even said they were perfect strangers. They said it was haunted.
Wow.
Almost everybody that's living in our family that's been in that house has experienced something.
Well,
So, including myself, but under the house,
okay.
not
Under the
in the
house.
back room. I never lived there, but.
And Candy, you've had dreams about that several times because you.
Oh, I have reoccurring dreams about that house, and it's always up under the houses. These are old houses, they're up on little risers, and you can there's crawl space under that house, and man, those reoccurring dreams aren't good. It's just not good. But all my mom, so this is my Aunt Vicky, and then my mother Tracy, they're all women sisters. There's no brothers or anything like that, and every single one of them, including my grandmother's sister Susan and all of her children, all have experiences in the house. Same as Vicky's.
Mm-hmm.
She's the first one, and I really think that they all heard and saw stuff. They just didn't want to say anything. And Vicky she's been like a catalyst for our family, because she don't care. It is what it is. She ain't heard it. She heard it. Like she's really helped us all not care. This is an experience that happened to us. It's legitimate. It's valid. And so over the years, she's helped other people realize, like, be able to say what they've heard and seen. And Granny's house has got crazy stories. Like, but it is Wetumpka, Alabama. So there's a lot of bad juju hanging around different parts of that. So, anyway. So.
Well, experiencers do tend to attract the paranormal.
Yeah, I've heard that. I
And,
will add that my cousin, I don't hope it's okay to say her name, Michelle, said there is a graveyard near my granny's house, and Michelle once was driving up, and she saw a spaceship over the graveyard, a saucer, classic saucer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
could you? Okay. Well, you've seen craft before.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So in my all along, all I would do was feel things or have it in a dream state. But then, like in 2017, for the first time in my life, I actually saw something. I was on my way to work and I saw this bubble-shaped thing in the sky, and on the bottom were these big lights, and they would go woo, 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 like that. And I'm just staring at this thing like, that can't be, what is that? And when you see stuff like this, your eyes try to open really wide, like, am I really seeing this? And I started looking around at other people, and I made sure it wasn't moving, because I stopped at a red light and I looked at it and it was still there, like a tree was there and it wasn't moving. So when I got home, I contacted MUFON, and they called me back and said 2 other women reported that same thing. And then it was like a year after that, I'm driving to work and another big ship in the same area. I mean, this thing was big, and
How big?
it was big as a football field. And it wasn't way up in the sky. It was like way low. And it like I had a grid of white lights on it, and it was boom, 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 boom. I tried to catch a pattern of the lights flashing, but I couldn't, because it was doing all kind of weird things under there. And I had a strong feeling they knew I was seeing them, and they knew that, and they were letting me know too. They saw me. And I also reported that one, but no one else reported seeing. Oh, but this is strange. So, and I was at a stoplight and I was staring at it, and I went on, and then these 2 police cars come up with the silent blue lights flashing. So apparently they must have seen it and they were trying to get to it. And I was like, what do you think you're going to do? You can't do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hilarious. But the other physical thing that has happened to me is I've always talked about Bigfoot and loved Bigfoot. And when my sisters and I, my niece Candace, went to this cabin in outside of Helen, Georgia. It's in Cleveland, Georgia. It's in the middle of nowhere. So now at that time, all week long, I said, Bigfoot, would you come and visit me? And I was joking and carrying on. Oh, just visit me, come on. Then the last night we were there, I heard this knocking outside. I said, somebody's chopping wood in the middle of the night. It's like 2 a.m. What is this? And then I realized I got this mental message. Did you ask us to come? And I said, oh my God. And dumb old me, I didn't even know they knocked on trees. I had no idea. I went home and YouTubed a Bigfoot, and they said they like to knock on trees or whatever they're doing. So over 2 years went by, and we went back to that very same cabin in March before the COVID-19 shutdown happened to celebrate my mother's life, and we were spreading her ashes. Well, every single night I was there, the knocking was outside, and it was different every night. Just barely the first night, then it got louder and more intense. I wanted my sisters and niece to hear it. They never did. They couldn't hear it. And then when I had them to lay in the living room with me, and I was going to wake them up when it started. But that night, instead of knocking, I heard outside growling, like, whoa, like that. And it scared me to death. I said, I've made you mad. And then this picture came into my mind. We're not a circus, and we're not here to do a show for people or something like that. And I said, that's not what this is about. I said, if you'll scan them, you'll see they love you, and don't, please, I'm sorry. And then it's like it stopped doing it, but they never did hear it. And the very next night, it was the weirdest sound I've ever heard in my life. Like I can't even describe it, but I have it on audio, and I put it on YouTube for anyone who wants to hear it. But that's exciting to me, because instead of just feeling it, I'm actually starting to physically see and hear, and that's fun.
Wow, you're so blessed. I'm really loving your story so far.
But I did report that to BFRO, which is the Bigfoot Research Organization, and the man called me back within 2 days, and he wanted me to tell him all about it. And he told me that he thinks they trust me. They wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have come up there like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was great. Now my husband doesn't believe any of it, so he just says that's cool. So.
Yeah, well, when stuff happened to me, I confided in my mom. My mom was into angels and crystals and whatnot. And like years later, I found out she had a pendulum, and I was working with pendulums, and I thought, oh my God, that's so cool. That my mom never told me, but I showed her actually how to use it. She's just bought it at a shaman shop, and I showed her, and when she started using it, it says, oh my God, it's moving on its own. It's moving. And she was on the phone, and I was telling her how to use it on the phone, and she was able to use it. And that was pretty cool. But my mom was my the one I could lean against when I was having trouble, and I'd share everything. But she said, like, if you want to share, just share between us. Don't tell anyone else, because people would think I was crazy.
Right.
But you seem to be an empath. You feel stuff. Have you ever had like clairaudience stuff? Well, you had telepathic messages, but did you have like messages of the future? Or did they say anything to you of something that might happen down the road?
I've had dreams about that, but usually where the dream is like where I'm shown a huge maybe tsunami coming, and I know it's coming and it's scary and it's big, but it overflows me, but it's okay because I'm not hurt by it. So I think everything that's going on right now is very frightening and scary, but we're being supported and we're going to be all right. I just feel like what needs to happen is you need to send out love to everything, everybody, everything, every being here on earth, above earth, under the earth, and all things too. And just keep doing that and raise the vibration. And I don't care how scary it gets, because whatever happens, you agreed to it before you came here. Yeah. So you're trying to live it. Go ahead and live it. Let's do this.
Have you ever seen shadow people?
I certainly have. As a matter of fact, and I don't like, everyone talks negatively about that. But so the house that I live in, my son Galen said, like the first night we were here, he saw a black shadow person. There's a huge fireplace, and he saw a black shadow person up there like Spider-Man. And I did hear him scream, but I never saw it. However, I've been in there, sitting in the living room, and it's like an inky black person comes walking by, and I'm like, hello, what was that? Now, I did ask.
I saw it in March. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think so.
I saw it in the house, and we were talking about it, and then you told us about Galen seeing it on the wall. Anyways, I have to say, I saw that
so
too.
I did ask.
I
feel no negative, and I did mention this to my friend, my psychic friend Shirley, and she said, Vicky, that's not going to harm. It's not going to harm you. And she made sure and said it many times. You're all right. It's not going to harm you. And also, my father-in-law's house was haunted by something. I would tell my family, there's something in that house. You would hear people walking down the hall, opening and closing doors constantly. The door. No, the one that was a beautiful house in Fort Walton Beach.
Shalimar, Poppy's house?
Yes. And
yes. Okay.
And that was confirmed to me by my son, my little son, I have a small son, had his friends there, and they wanted to stay in the living room that night, and I didn't say anything to them. Well, the next morning he comes up and says, well, somebody came in there and started moving chairs around, but I didn't see anyone. Well, of course, I didn't say a thing. But I felt like it was an older man, and for the first time I could feel who it was. And I did find out one time I heard my grandfather in the shower, but yet there was an old man standing there in his bedroom. So I believe I saw him. but I just told him, I love your home and I'm not going to bother you and please don't bother me. So yeah, so if there's an entity of any kind, I'm going to feel it.
I've had 5 in my bedroom, like really large, well, those that want to view the, know the whole story, they can view the prior video that I did with, called Ladies of the Grace. But really quick, they were like 6 feet tall with really broad shoulders, and they had a huge helmet on their head. You can see any neck. I think, Candy, did you contact me because of that? Because of the
Yeah,
okay.
because
So,
I never heard somebody describe what I saw so closely ever, and I researched forever trying to find that.
okay, so we'll
So
get into
very
that later.
similar.
Awesome, cool. So yeah, after when I called in my second craft over my dad's house, and when I was able to get my mom and dad to come out, my mom came out rather quickly because she's into this stuff. So she saw it was like a really big orb ship, orange, red in color, that came in just above the tree line. So that was, yeah. And a week prior to that, I called in to say the same craft. So it was, I suspected to say it's the same craft. But when my dad came out, he saw it a bit further away. But since that moment on, he started having experiences. And a few months later, before my mom would pass away, he'd have a golden 4-inch orb fly in the bedroom from one side of and flew to the other side of the bedroom and went out through the window. And then he'd wake up, he'd feel like people touching him at night, and he'd wake up with a shadow being right beside him. But the thing is, his mom passed away not too long before that. So we suspect that my grandmother came in and said hello. But yeah, shadow people, it tends to be one of the common themes that experiencers do have. So that to you, well, to me, and like we're having 3 right now. I'm not sure, John, did you have any shadow people in your bedroom?
No, I mean I've seen one, but it was outside.
Okay.
So no, I've never really had that experience.
Okay. But yeah, it's a common theme. Vicky, I think you spoke to me later, before the video that I think you had corroboration with that. I think was it your son or somebody?
Oh, yes. This was really shocking because I thought it was all dreams. Really felt like real, like it was happening, but I wasn't sure. And then one morning I get up and I had twins, and at this time they were 4 years old. And my son Galen says to me, "Mommy, your friend was here. I saw your friend." I said, What friend?" He goes, the one with eyes like this. And he goes like this. And I'm sitting there staring at him. I'm like, really? Well, what did they do? He goes, "She poked me." I said, "She poked you? Where?" And he raised his shirt and he pointed to his stomach. And I could see a mark on his stomach, like a red mark. And I was completely freaked out. I said, this crap's really happening. This is not a joke. And I knew that was confirmation to me that it may feel dreamy, like a dream state, but it was actually happening. And my children saw it. And then later on, I would dream that my children were being taken into other rooms. Like they were interested in seeing them for a while, and they would go into other rooms. And I had the feeling like they were being taught something, like being shown things or taught things. I never felt someone would always stay with me and say, "It's okay, they're fine, don't worry." And then sure enough, they would come back. But my children have no memory of any of it at this time, but I believe they will when they're ready to.
So have they had any experiences after that?
No, except my one son, Galen, saw that shadow man.
Okay.
My other son only said he saw a ghost once when he was doing a school thing, a ghost person. But other than that, they listen to me. So, but they don't make fun, but they don't have the experiences. And I was told by Shirley that it's on purpose to keep me more grounded.
Now, one theme also that comes around a lot is afraid of the dark. When you were a kid, were you afraid of the dark? Were you afraid of looking under the bed? Afraid of the closet?
I don't. Being in my grandmother's house, I was never sleep with the covers down. I always had them over my head because I was afraid of the dark, and I don't like closets. And also, I know that if I open my eyes, I'm going to see something. And even to this day, if I open my eyes in the dark, I see movement, and I don't want to see that. And I'm not. So I just keep my eyes closed.
Yeah. I would sleep against the wall, and because I tell my mom there were people in the room, and she didn't really believe me, but of course I was 3 years old at the time. Even growing up, I thought it was because nothing. I'm a year older than my brother, but since I'm the firstborn, I was alone, and so I thought that perhaps it's a normal thing. You're afraid of the dark, and that was it. But the fact that I tell my mom there were people in the room, I was afraid of the dark. I'd sleep with my wall. I'd sleep against the wall until the age of 11. So I knew that. I think I wanted to protect my, the front side, and if I was attacked, perhaps my back would take the blunt of the force. But I was really freaked out, and when I stopped sleeping against the wall, I was about the age of 11, and at night I woke up, but my eyes are closed. I'm fully aware, and my legs were at a 45-degree angle in the air. Like, why the heck would I have my legs in the air, in bed? And I think I was being taken. I say out loud in my head, no. I scream in my head, and my legs fall directly to the bed. And since that day on, I stopped sleeping against the wall, which is strange.
Mm-hmm.
Could be, I don't know. It's way too strange. But yeah, and well, I'm not sure if I was taken, but when I was a kid, but my experiences stopped after that. Well, when my brother was born, I guess my life started being normal again up until the age of 25, when I was finally on my own for the first time. And then that's when my experiences started. I get the visions, I get the voices in my head at night that tell me about the future, and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I won't get into detail. But yeah, it's a pretty hectic life when you think of it. I'm glad I had my mom though, that thought it was normal. But I know my grandmother had a lot of dreams. She was flying, which is strange. So,
Oh, I've dreamed about flying, and I secretly, like, I forget that. Like, I say, oh, I'm going to freak everyone out by flying. Like, I can float up to the top of the ceiling and say, see, I told you I could fly. I do that a lot.
yeah.
It's interesting that you guys said that, because I've had a couple dreams where it was literally like I could just levitate, and I go back down, I could levitate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so strange because the sensation I had as I was like levitating was something that I had done before. Like, it felt so familiar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's kind of interesting, So
Mm-hmm.
just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, for some reason I find it strange that I think flying is a normal thing. I don't know why, but like I could levitate myself for some reason. Sometimes I walk, and I'm not a Jedi, but I look at an object, and for some reason I know I could somehow make that object come to my hand. So is it a past life thing? It's crazy.
I feel that too. Yeah. I think we all feel that.
Definitely.
Yeah. And
it's like something you forgot. It's kind of like
Right.
well, I mean, Candace is able to remember her dreams really well, but it feels kind of like when you wake up and you really want to remember a dream, but it just slowly kind of goes away. You can't like grasp it. That's how it feels like in those dreams or visions or whatever about levitating, flying. It does feel like you're remembering something. Like, I don't know, very interesting.
And Vicky, I think you said that some of the beings they showed you love. they projected love onto you.
Yes.
I'd call that radiation love because
Oh.
yeah, it's when one time during the night, I think this was in December 2013, I was being felt up while sleeping, and I know I was sleeping. I'm in bed, but I'm sort of paralyzed. I'm not moving, but I'm just feeling this light tap coming up to my hip. And as soon as I, the taps were up to my hip, I sort of go into full blown vision mode, and all I see is this beautiful, long blonde haired woman,
Oh.
but she was wearing very old robes, like 1800 types of bedroom robes, very puffy. And she says to me, but the thing is, she was projecting love. I've never felt that before. It felt like what I call radiation love. Every cell in my body would feel the feelings that she was projecting. So to me, it was love. And I felt paralyzed because of that. That's how strong it was. And
Yeah.
so there's a whole story, but yeah, so I did feel that, and it's really, there's no, you can't really describe it.
I know it's unreal. And one thing I did try to do, like I went to a baseball game, a Braves baseball game, and you could see all these people sitting down. And I said, I'm going to do what she did. I am going to just love everybody in this stadium right now and see what that feels like. So I just sent out love to everybody in the stadium. And wow, that just felt so good. It's just like a very powerful thing. We're so filled with fear because fear's coming at us from every angle, everything. And this just, if we could just send out love, we could change things.
Yeah, the government's putting us on the edge all the time with everything. The media, they're not even talking about terrorism anymore. It's all about COVID. And, but where's the terrorists now? They're all gone. So
Yeah.
you can clearly see that, it's an agenda. Go ahead, John.
Interesting how, actually, this guy, I guess, sidebar thing, but interesting how they put a ceasefire in certain war areas because of the virus.
Yeah.
So it's very peculiar. It's like, okay, the virus goes away. Let's go back to shooting each other.
Yeah. Like, stop.
Yeah. So strange.
So Candy, so when did your stuff start to happen?
I grew up hearing all of this stuff, especially from my Aunt Vicky, and I never really believed it as like actual fact, but I never like disbelieved it. Like in my child brain, it's not like black or white, it wasn't like it wasn't real, but it wasn't like it's like my waking reality. And so I always grew up with this in the back of my head, which as an adult, I'm so super thankful for. Vicky, just for your ability to be your authentic self has really been a catalyst for our family to finally be our authentic selves. And so I'd always heard about this growing up. I never really got super interested in the research because actually, to be honest, all the alien movies and stuff always really frightened me as a kid. Don't get me wrong, because I loved horror, but just the alien stuff always freaked me out. And so I think actually, like you guys, I was afraid of the dark when I was a kid, like super afraid of being in my room. Same as Vicky, like I feel like if I opened my eyes, I was going to see stuff, not just because of movement outside the windows or lights, cars driving by, like actual things in my room. And actually, that makes me remember, it was like probably 1999. I was living in Guam at the time. Military family, far back. My dad was stationed there. And so I was laying in my bed and I just woke up out of the middle of nowhere, which was not uncommon for me as a kid. And I was standing right beside my bed. And this was physical, not a dream state, not anything like that. I saw it with my own eyes. It was a girl, and at the time I thought it might have been a doppelganger of me. because I couldn't see her facial features at all. She was all in white, a long white nightgown. She was probably aged, 8 to 10. And she had a blunt haircut, darker hair with blunt bangs, which is how I always wore my hair as a child. It wasn't currently how I had my hair styled or anything, but that's why I thought it was a doppelganger. Going back and learning about all the history of the war in the Pacific there, I think she might actually maybe been a stuck spirit, but that was probably like my first legitimate paranormal experience that I can remember, other than feeling things around me all the time, being terrified of the dark. But as far as like this UFO exopolitic alien stuff, it really wasn't until like 2006, 7, when I was at the cabin with my aunts. We go every single year to Helen, Georgia, and celebrate the life of my grandmother. And she started showing us videos of these military men and women talking about where they've been off planet and the things that they've seen. And, at this point, aliens and stuff like were just this kind of fantasy world, like fairies and giants that I loved, but it was like fantasy world, like Santa or something. And then I started thinking, like, why are these people risking their lives, their families' lives, their everything? And so she really was the catalyst for me and my mother and this side of the family that branched off to really research things like that. And so I think that was probably 2006, 7. I don't remember what our first year was, but we've been doing it a long time. So nothing ever really like happened to me other than being interested in it. Well, I was gonna say until late 2011, but that's not true, because I remember when I first moved to Guam, first moved to England, which was after Guam. That's where I graduated high school. It was 2005. We were living off base in a place called Newmarket. It's in Suffolk, UK. And my brother and I were walking, exploring the area, and it was like kind of dusky, whatever. And Newmarket in Suffolk is like the middle of nowhere farmland. If you can imagine, there's any place in England not developed, because it's so, it really does not have a whole lot of housing or anything like that. And so, that's where they have the horse races. And so we were just walking along, and there's nothing really around, just really long driveways, lots of grass, and we see something in the sky. I try to remember it for the life of me. I cannot remember what we saw, but it freaked us out so bad. And like I said, we grew up on a military base. We're very familiar with things, and not just military bases, Air Force bases. So we're very familiar with things that fly, not prone to get freaked out or anything like that. And so he doesn't actually have any memory of this whatsoever. But we ran as fast as our feet could take us to the house. And me and my brother grew up fighting. Like we were physically very strong. We, a little cocky at that age, especially. We weren't afraid of anything. And so that really just sticks out. And I can't believe that I almost forgot that. So I guess that was like my first experience with like something unknown that we saw, because it wasn't what we know, the technology that we had at that time or that we've ever seen. It freaked us out. I wish I could remember what we saw. But the next kind of series of things didn't really happen until 2011. And at this point, I started having dream state experiences. And I hate to even attach the word dream to them, because it feels completely different. I grew up with night terrors, always have had them, which are very, very real to me, but they seemed even more real than that. And so one of the very interesting things about my dream starting in 2011 is I actually lived in St. Petersburg, Florida at that time. And my husband, John, actually lived right across the hall on the same floor, the second floor, just a couple doors down with his girlfriend. I knew his girlfriend. I played with their dog, but we never actually met person to person. And he's had like physical experience since he was a child. And so it was very interesting that these dream state things only happened when we lived under the same roof. very interesting to me. And then going to find out, we've always lived within a 5-mile radius of each other. Every time each of us moved in Florida, we both moved right close to each other. And we actually moved to Florida a couple months after. Anyway, so I had several dreams in late 2011, 2000, and throughout 2012. A lot of them were like Vicky. I dreamt of a lot of tsunamis. I dreamt of water just raising out of nowhere, the world in chaos. And they were visceral dreams. They're not just like regular dreams. Like in one dream, I was saving this guy from getting sucked into an aqueduct, and he was in a helmet and very nice khakis and like a you know, a yuppie neighborhood. I sorry to use that term, suburbs. But I mean, I had my fingers underneath his teeth trying to grab him from getting sucked in it. That's how fast the water raised. And like, I mean, it was visceral. I experienced that. And so I've been shown these kind of dreams, the same as my Aunt Vicky, over and over and over again. And so one of the most powerful dream state experiences that I actually had were with those beings, Yannick, that connected us. And so they were shrouded I mean, I didn't get like necessarily a direct look at them because they were standing behind my shoulder. And I know I sent you a photo, but it's drawn in pencil and it will not come through the scan. I'll have to redraw that in ink so it shows up. But this is the gist of it. So I was sitting in this big room, maybe like a warehouse. I was on a couch. In front of me, there is this big screen. Right to the left of it is a hallway. Then to my far left, there's like an airplane hangar door, and it's open. The being is behind me. Through that airplane hangar door, all I see are these massive rolling hills, green as far as I can see, and I'm clearly up higher. And you know, when I was drawing it for my mom, because at this point, you know, I really only told my mom anything. I didn't even tell my Aunt Vicky or anything until later. My gut instinct said, oh, this is like Norway. I've never been to Norway, never been to any of those beautiful places like that. But that's what you know, my brain said, hey, this looks like those out there scapes where nobody lives, not even goats, just boom. So beautiful, clear blue sky. It wasn't cold kind of season. So that's all I noticed. And so there's this being behind me. And one of the most striking features of this being were his shoulders. And in the proportions of a football player, when they wear their shoulder pads, they just, boom, they're out there. But this was even bigger than a football player, which I mean, already is almost 7 foot tall in real life. And then you add the shoulder pad. I mean, this was a giant being. And shoulders were proportionately larger than the rest of its body, even though it was shrouded. I couldn't see any limbs. I couldn't see any feet. But you can just tell the shoulders are much bigger. And then when I get your clear photo, Yannick, you'll be able to see what I drew. And I actually made that drawing in 2015, even though I had that dream in 2012. And so the other most striking feature is, you know, I couldn't see any facial features. I couldn't necessarily say what's on its head, although it is very large and round. So I thought that it might be shrouded, but I couldn't really tell. All I know that it was one solid color. But it had this black circle protruding out of where the face would be. And it looks like, if you know the Raid Can wasp spray, and it's like a circle sprayer or like a megaphone but shrunk down a little bit, and it was all black. And I guess I could call it a proboscis, but it really wasn't that. It really looked like the can of wasp spray shape, like a little tiny megaphone or something, all black. And so nothing audibly spoke to me. There was that one being behind me, but I did have a sense that there were other beings there, directly across from me down that hallway. I feel like there were more down there, but I could not see down that hallway. Anyways, I was sitting on this couch looking at this big white blank screen, and I was being tested. And what I had to do was move things on the screen with my mind. And it was a series of tests, and I really, it wasn't until the testing that I became like lucid, like I realized that this was happening to me, and I started panicking because I realized that I am not doing very well. And at this point, it's not dream state or anything. I'm lucid. This is happening to me. And oh shit, I mean, sorry, we're on YouTube. I forgot. Oh my God, I'm failing. And then, and I can feel like them not necessarily being agitated. So like when your parents aren't really mad at you, but they're disappointed in you, it felt like that kind of feeling. And so I immediately started going, no, I'm sorry. Please let me try again. Please let me try again. I know I can do this. And then all of a sudden that was the end to that. Nothing else after that. But I mean, I couldn't let that go for weeks and weeks and weeks after I dreamt this. I mean, I really felt that disparity of not completing this task. And, up until today, I never really knew that, Vicky, that you had those experiences where you're being tested. I mean, I know I've grown
Yeah.
up with this information, but you're still my aunt, you know what I mean? And so a lot of stuff has gone in one ear and out the other. And so like that really kind of shocks me, because now later in life, I remember reading your book. I remember being very affected by it and crying, but not necessarily remembering why. And it wasn't until we started talking about screen memories, because I had never heard of that, until we started talking about it, and yours were wolves. And I have this reoccurring dream at my grandparents' house, who have a lot of land, and the entire property is surrounded by wolves, and I'm stuck on the porch and can't get in and do not want to be taken. That is my fear. I don't want them to take me. And so, a lot of things started connecting as an adult, especially after these dreams started in 2011 and things like that. And, since then, I've had so many of these kind of dream state visions. A lot of them have to do with flooding in different parts of the world, but mostly in the southeastern United States. And it's always around Halloween time. So I don't know what that's all about, but I know it involves the military base. I've had dreams about the military base, about crafts crashing into them. I've had dream states where there's a flotilla in the sky. My mother's had very similar dreams that they're almost identical to mine. Very interesting. And then, I also, John and I, in 2015, March 9th, 2015, which was actually the day after one of my family's trips with my grandmother that year. Literally the day I got back is the day that this craft came into our yard. And so I did send you some information about that, but it happened March 9th, 2015, and I'll share my nutshell version so John can share his nutshell version. But it was pretty late at night. We were cooking muffins. We had them on the stove. We went out back to have a cigarette. And it's almost dusk, and we're looking up into the sky. We're living in Ybor City, Florida at this point. And it's, what was it, like 10 o'clock at night, something like that?
Yeah, it was dusk. I mean, it wasn't totally dark, because I remember
Florida was summer. Spring, summer. It stays dark pretty late, and it doesn't get dark until like after midnight. So we have sweet tooth, so we're making some muffins, and we go out to have a cigarette, and we're looking like we always do. We always look up. And so he starts talking about seeing these 3 dark black balloons or something like that. And honest to God, it was like a little windy. So, and I'm so sorry for this, John, but I really thought he was just seeing the clouds move by a tree or something, like, it was playing, how that stuff can play with your eyes. So I just kind of was like, whatever. And I'm so sorry I did that. But anyways, and he kept going, no, that's not it. I see these things. And I wear glasses. I was not wearing glasses at this time. And so maybe it was just that I couldn't actually see what he was talking about. So they're coming down, like, we have alley behind our house. It's all grass alley. Florida's nothing but grass and weeds and jungle. But it's still a clearing between the lots of houses. And so it's coming from the west and going east.
East going west.
So yeah, okay. Anyways, so he knows this, and it's all on the map because I can't explain direction. So it's coming from our right-hand side and going that way. And so when I see it, I do not see it as three separate things, objects. He saw it as three separate things. When I saw it, it was when it was pretty close to our house, probably in the other house's lot, so a whole lot away from us. And when I saw it, it was one complete object, and it wasn't shaped like an egg, but if you ever played old school Mario and Yoshi's egg, and he shoots out, it looks like the butt of an egg. Kind of like an oval, but I don't know exactly what shape that is. It's like if you took two eggs and went point to point and outlined the outside. It looks like Yoshi's egg. Anyway, so it was opaque white, and it was glowing like a yellowy orange from within it. And I'm telling you, this thing took forever to go through our yard because we were cooking muffins, and we went in to check on them at least 3 times while we were out here looking at this thing. So it was just taking a long time to get until it was in our yard. And so we have a grapefruit tree in our yard, very old grapefruit tree. It's probably about 30 foot tall. And it was probably only another 30 or 40 feet above the tree. Like, I swear to you, Yannick, if I threw a rock, it would have hit it. I got a strong arm. I could have hit whatever this was. It was that freaking close to us. And so, you know, at this point, John's like, oh, super excited. He's like, yes, I can't believe this is happening. This is what I've always wanted to see. And I am freaking out. I am stunned mullet. I can't move. I grab onto his arm and I say, don't you dare leave me, because I have this paralyzing fear of, please don't take me away from where I'm at. Why I would have that fear, I have no idea. And so I'm standing there like this, and he's like, let me go. Basically, I want to get a better look at this thing. And so he finally does, and we're just stunned that this thing is even in our yard. It's no sound whatsoever. It does have an inner illumination, but it is not illuminating things around it. It is semi-opaque, and it is organic. There is nothing, it did not come off as a machine, especially living on a military base and you seeing crafts, it felt alive, like it was observing us, and its movements was organic, not like a robotic thing on a track. I mean, it's hard to convey that over a video chat, but when you're around like a dead animal and a live animal, and you can feel a difference of life force, that's how you could feel it. I mean, it was organic, it was alive. And so, you know, then after that happened, I went in and why did I check on the muffins? I should have just let them burn. Like, seriously, muffins came above this. But anyways, went in to check on them. And so we watched it just continue down the alleyway through the line of houses, and it just disappeared. Didn't disappear fast. It just disappeared out of our line of sight. So I go back in, check on the muffins, and I go back outside and I have another cigarette. And I'm thinking, God, Candace, what an idiot you are. How could you be so scared? How could you not send love to that craft and say, thank you for being here? And I was just so disappointed in myself for the fear that I let consume me. And I'm looking up into the stars and I'm saying, please come back. And I am a legitimate idiot, running to every corner of the yard saying, please come back, I'm so sorry, and sending love and projecting green light from my heart. And I look up in the sky and I see 3 points of light, which I just thought was Orion's belt, because that's how bright and how aligned they were. And all of a sudden, these three stars start shooting across the sky. And I'm screaming to John, who is inside the house, babe, they're back. Come on, they're moving so fast. Oh my God. And I'm trying to get my phone to work to take a video, and I can't because I'm just so flustered. And so he comes out, and they're moving across the sky in a line. And all of a sudden, these 3 points of light turn and make a triangle, and then just seriously, whew, gone completely. Goodbye, out of my vision, just completely good night. And so, you know, we rode into MUFON. We were investigated by 2 prior military dudes who checked the military base, checked satellites. It was nothing that they could confirm. They're like, oh yeah, this is pretty interesting. And they've had their own sightings as pilots and things like that. And so, you know, I never post anything like this on Facebook. You know, I don't necessarily want people to view me that way. Now I'm kind of along the lines where I don't care. This is who I am. This is what happened. And so we posted something, and, you know, a couple days later, one of our friends now, who we were not friends with then, must have saw our post and was videotaping. They were outside having like some kind of drinks or whatever. Where we live, Ybor City is a party town, so we didn't live too far off the strip. And they're videotaping the sky because there are 3 orange orbs kind of like dancing in the sky. And I say dancing because as one would drop down, one would go up, and then they would alternate kind of like this. And so he sent us a small clip of what he saw. He did not film the entirety of it, but the most interesting part of that thing is we talked about it with the people that investigated MUFON, and they're like, yeah, it still is not something that's on the record that we know about from MacDill Air Force Base, or that we know about from the commercial flight logs, or the private flight logs. We can't say what that is. But that it was over our house where we live. And this guy specifically mentions my name on the tape, and I've never met him. I don't have any mutual friends with him. And so somehow our experience just happened to get redirected to somebody that actually filmed something above our house and cannot be confirmed with the military base or the flight log. So, you know, after that point, you know, I always believed it, and I researched a lot, and my thought process was, why would these people risk everything in their life, their own life, their family's life, their finances, their future, just to say some crazy crap? Why? And it just didn't resonate with me, and I had no choice but to take it seriously. And my Aunt Vicky is an amazing person, and you know, I'm very fortunate that I grew up like that, because there's no faking that. She doesn't tell anybody. I can't even believe that she's doing this right now. You know, she's not trying to get recognized for anything. And why, you know, there was no other possibility to believe that. And then after this happened to me in person, man, all the doors opened up. My eyes are wide open, and I have learned and accepted so many new types of information that I never thought that I could accept. And because I did open that up, I learned about a lot more of my husband's experiences that he probably would have never shared, because they're so to the normie. And no offense, I was the normie. To the, like, it is, you know, it's completely out of your scope. It's, you know, it's out of one of my Dungeons and Dragons novels. Like, it's just incredible. And so those are just a few of my experiences. But it did allow, you know, my open mind did allow John to be able to share a lot of, and I hate to use the word crazy, but it's like mind-blowing kind of things that he has experienced that I would have never accepted otherwise.
All right. Well, John, I guess it's your turn then. Go ahead.
Well, as we were just talking, I started writing down things because, like Candy said, there's just so many things. But I'll just kind of start off, I guess, as a child. It actually, so I had this experience, and just to add, for whatever reason, I have a really crazy memory. Like, I can just, I remember stuff and my parents were like, how do you remember that? Anyways, so at this time, me and my mom and dad were living in Southern California, and we had a house right on the ocean. It was really awesome. But I was about three or four, and my room was in the second level, and it was kind of a small pitched roof or ceiling in the room, and rectangular. And at the very end of the room was a window, and so my bed was basically kind of, if I looked towards my feet, I could see the window in the distance. So I had night terrors, and I feel like they kind of started during this time period as well. So one night, for whatever reason, I woke up and I saw like glowing eyes on the outside of my window. And, of course I'm like, ah! So, my dad runs up there and like, hey, what's wrong? What's wrong? And so I'm like, well, there's these, I don't know, I saw these eyes outside. And obviously I'm on the second level. There's nothing that, anybody could stand on per se, not a deck or anything like that. So my dad explained it to me just to get me calmed down, is that he thought they were owls. And strangely enough, throughout my whole life, there's been a theme with owls. So, like I said, that was about 3 years old. And now I'm kind of looking at this. So at this point, I don't know, it's hard to even describe, even as a young child. I kind of knew somehow that my body wasn't necessarily who I was. And so I'd have this habit, as a kid. I'll go in the bathroom and I'd sit on the counter and I'd, pop open the medicine cabinet and it had a mirror on it. And then I would, reflect it off another mirror. So you can have that like infinity kind of repetition. And, I would do that a lot. And all of a sudden I would go into this trance state, and whatever reason, seeing myself, repeated multiple times kind of just detached my identity, I guess, my sense of self. So, and it wasn't a scary thing to me. It was more of like, oh, cool, like I'm learning something here. So ever since then, I've had an issue with, it's called depersonalization, or derealization, disassociation as well, and also body dysmorphia, which is, kind of strange. A lot of people that have eating disorders struggle with that, but mine was more so, I just couldn't really identify with what I saw in the mirror. As far as myself, I knew that's who I was, that's like my body, but I knew like there was something more to this whole thing. So as a young kid, I don't know, I kind of feel like I kind of existed in two worlds to a certain extent. Like my mind was really vivid, and just the thoughts I would have. And so I guess I guess I was just kind of a strange kid. I mean, everybody knows that. All my friends from back in the day have always said, like, man, you're just really different. So, and I think it has a lot to do with that, because, I still don't feel like, like this is myself per se. So anyways, I've had like a strange interest in a lot of, unknown, unexplained things, even from as a very young child. Just as an example, my favorite show when I was a kid was Twilight Zone. So my mom worked at a TV station. I'd go there after school and I'd grab, this is old programming, you didn't have satellites, so I'd grab these old tapes at the programming room and sit in the conference room and watch Twilight Zone for hours. So anyways, I've had this kind of thing where I was really okay with I guess my strangeness, or whatever you want to say. And so, like I said, that was, as a child. Oh, and just to add, my dad is a pastor. So I grew up, he's very conservative, grew up, went to a Christian elementary school, a Catholic school for junior high. so I know about the Bible, and that's just interesting dynamic in my life, because it gives me kind of a base knowledge about some things. So anyways, I'm going through high school or junior high. I've had a handful of strange experiences at that time, and both more so paranormal, I guess. I definitely had an interest in UFOs, aliens, and things like that, solely because I liked kind of strange things. There's things that people don't talk a lot about. Not necessarily, getting deep into, the information about UFOs or the phenomenon. So, it was just something I had an open mind to. So anyways, I had a few paranormal experiences. And then in high school, I lived in a very remote area of Southern Oregon at this time. It's a place called Beatty, Oregon, which is 40 miles east of a very small town called Klamath Falls, Oregon. Now, Beatty, Oregon only has like 100 people in it. We had a ranch out there. So at this point, I think I'm like 16, 17. Me and my stepbrother, Trevor, we had a kind of a bunk bed kind of set up, and we slept in the room. Was a pretty long room. It was like, I don't know, probably 20 feet long and about 12 feet wide. And it had vaulted ceilings. So the ceiling at the very top was probably like 12, 14 feet. Now our bunk bed is right up against the outside wall of the room, and so I was on the top bunk. Now there's a window above me about 4 feet from the bunk bed. So if I got on my knees, I could see out this window. Anyways, this one night during the summer, just out of nowhere, wake up and I see this like really rich blue light, and it's so crazy because it was kind of I didn't want to look out through the window, but it was coming at at an angle that didn't really make sense in terms of where the moon was. And because we lived in a remote area, and there's it's a lot of BLM land, which is really open federal land anybody can do or go to. And people unfortunately spotlight deer, which is poaching, but they do it at night. So sometimes you'll see these big spotlights, in the forest and people driving around. So I knew because of the elevation of this light that I was kind of going through things to try to figure out what this may be. So I knew it wasn't, a spotlight. I knew it wasn't necessarily the moon. And all in that, that short moment of all this happening, my brother Trevor on the lower bunk, he's awake as well, and I can feel the bed shaking because he's shaking. He's scared. He's literally scared, and he's like, "John, do you see that light?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I see that light." And like I said, it was just one of the coolest blue, like if you could picture moonlight, just like being almost iridescent, so to speak. And so, in my mind, I'm still kind of skeptic. I try to keep myself grounded in terms of like, what seems reasonable or plausible. But anyway, so, we're kind of we're not necessarily looking at light, we're seeing it cast in our room, and we could see it on the carpet. So obviously this is pretty, high angle, steep angle. Now what happens is like the angle switches. And so it's going up on our wall, the opposite wall. And I could see the shadow of the window, like the window seal, because you could open it, the window. I saw the shadow moving. So obviously this light, wherever it's coming from, is moving as well. And then, it kind of like gradually goes down back to the carpet, and then it fades away. So it must have left. I didn't really, me and my brother, Trevor, we're both just kind of like, whoa, we really couldn't really understand what was going on. Now, the next day is very interesting because we both woke up and, going about our normal morning routine. And then it wasn't until I saw our clocks were all at 12 o'clock. So the power had went out. And that was like this thing that really triggered it, because I totally forgot what had happened that night before. And and then just seeing those clocks, I was like, oh, whoa, like I forgot about what was going on last night. And my brother Trevor as well, we kind of had forgotten until, this memory got triggered by looking at the clocks. So that was a pretty significant experience for me. And kind of looking at some of the things I wrote down here, but more or less, really my kind of paranormal experiences and things like that really increased after I was in the hospital in 2001. I have Crohn's disease, and I was in there for over a month and had like a major surgery, and then I had to have emergency surgery because something they didn't stitch up, and I was bleeding. So I had all blood transfusions, all kinds of stuff, and literally the day after I kind of wake up after emergency surgery, I immediately hear all kinds of voices in the hospital. And like it got so bad that I told the nurse to give me earplugs. And she even confirmed this as well. She came out of my room one time, it was like crying, talking about how the wing of the hospital where I was at was really haunted. I mean, it really was. And so right after, having that kind of near death experience, things really kicked up for me. And the interesting thing was when I went into emergency surgery, I had an incredible vivid vision that I remembered after I woke up. And I don't know if you've ever been under anesthesia. It's kind of like impossible to really remember what what had happened when you're under anesthesia. So, I had this crazy vivid vision, and it was so vivid that when I woke up from emergency surgery, I immediately asked my nurse. I was like, because in my vision, what I had saw was so just very strange. I was in an operating room, and I was in a bed, hospital bed, and I was kind of wheeled to the very end of this room. And if I looked to my right, I could see the operating table, and the only light that was showing in the whole room was just the surgical light. So I could look to my right, and I saw, like 3 or 4 doctors, and then, I could see the operation or something was going on. Well, anyways, next to me was a guy in a hospital bed, and he was chained to the bed and just making all kinds of noise, and so I could feel like the pain from my surgery and things like that. So I was like, in my vision, I was, leaning up, looking at him. I was very concerned, and I started yelling for the nurses, like, man, help this guy out. Something is going on, and so, I wake up, and, that was very vivid. And, because in my vision, I was asking the nurse to help this guy out, who was my nurse. So, I asked her, I was like, what happened to that guy? And, she obviously, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyways, that kind of was this door that opened for me with paranormal things. And as far as the UFO thing, that as well. I had a very interesting experience in 2004 where I got really sick again. And so, it was just kind of it was a very challenging time. I was in a band, so trying to keep up with that, and, working as well, not feeling good and all this stuff. And this one night, just out of nowhere, I'm reading a book, and, I don't really read fiction. I like nonfiction and, interesting things, science, quantum, physics, whatever the unknown. So I'm reading a book, and I actually can remember what it was. I was reading the Dead Sea Scrolls and just, kind of spacing out. And it was like all of a sudden, it was like the room kind of felt like it was slowly kind of like raising, like you could feel like almost like when you put 2 magnets that are repelling each other, it's almost kind of like you feel like there's kind of like this floating kind of feel, I guess. And strangely enough, I just kind of went into this trance, and my eyes were open. I remember all this very vividly. My eyes were open and the room started fading out. Everything turned to this like obsidian, like dark. And then I could see this this little point of light. There was nothing there. It was completely black, but all I could see was this little point of light. And this voice told me, concentrate on this light. Don't get distracted, and then we can communicate. So I'm looking at this light, and the strangest thing is like, if you were to picture like a big piece of black paper or something, and just poking a little hole in it, and having, you know, some light behind it illuminating. So I'm looking at this hole, and it's very slowly, it's getting bigger. And it almost looks like there's like this strange mist coming out of it. So from whatever's on the other side. And so, you know, I'm concentrating and things are going fairly well. Like I start to feel my body fade away, and I'm continuing to look at this light as it kind of comes to me. Now at this point, there's an entity, I guess, consciousness that started communicating with me. And basically at this point in time, and it was very relevant for my life at the moment, he was basically saying, you know, fear is an illusion. Fear is based on the physical experience you have with the body. Because if you don't have the body, you really don't have fear. And so I was, you know, I'm like, okay. And then this entity, this being, shows himself to me in this vision. And it was just, it's pretty mind-blowing. If you ever played one of those like games, those video games where you can create a character and you can kind of like spin them around and look at them at different angles, that's basically kind of how he presented himself to me. And it was basically this black void, and all I could see was him. And strangely enough, and I only, like last year, Candy knows that I ran across some information about this that just blew my mind, because I'd never heard about this before. So the being that I saw, or you know, was presented to me, communicating with me, was like this enormous, like owl, like humanoid. And the crazy thing is the feeling I got was something I've never felt before. It was like I was in the presence of something incredibly old and incredibly intelligent. And it's so vivid because I could even see the feathers on his body, and that how they were smaller on his chest and they were bigger in different areas, just like a bird would be. And like, you know, even on its face, it didn't have like a beak or anything. It was more human looking in the face, no mouth, but just it was really incredible. And basically what was communicated to me was that he was my guardian, so to speak. He was like assigned to me, and he told me or communicated to me about his name, and that it was very important that I not tell anybody, because this was a personal connection that was only relevant to him and I. And he more or less stated to me that throughout my life, if I have issues, I can ask him to help me. And basically just say his name 3 times, which sounds kind of, you know, corny and typical, but that's what was communicated to me. And to be honest, I have asked him, you know, for help in different areas, and just but was communicated to me was very important. He said, you know, you only need me in your most dire, you know, times. Basically, he was saying it's really important to go through life as an individual, so you can have, basically, so you have disappointment and things, so you can start to contrast, you know, about life, and try to, you know, understand it a little more. And you don't necessarily need someone to hold your hand through it, but if necessary, you know, you could get some guidance. So that happened in 2004. That same time, I was having all kinds of paranormal experiences in the house I was living in. I lived with three of my friends. We were in a band together, so it kind of worked out. I made a studio in the basement. But anyways, I had this interesting dream, a couple of them, and one of them was um, it was all my friends were in the house, and in the dream, people were hearing voices through through the ventilation system. So you know, in some old houses, you can talk through a vent, and you can hear it in another vent. So we were all upstairs in the dream, and we were hearing voices downstairs. So in the dream, people were kind of like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" So we all go downstairs to see what was happening. Nothing was there. We hear the voice again through through the vent, and it sounded like it was upstairs. So at this point, we go upstairs, and in my dream, I'm like, because at this, you know, Candy can say, I really, my curiosity overrides any kind of fear that I have. Like I
It
have to
really
know.
does.
Yeah,
You feel
I
it.
have to know. I get
Completely
excited.
fearless.
Yeah, I get, it's just something that,
Yes.
yeah, it's just, I don't know. So anyways, in the dream, like you know, I lean down and I'm listening through the ventilation system, and this guy says, "Hey, tell everybody not to freak out because I don't really mean any harm. I just live here, and I kind of live here like you guys live here." And so, you know, in my dream, I'm telling everybody, "Hey, man, calm down. This guy's cool. It's no big deal." So, yeah, the dream was very vivid. So the next day, you know how people kind of like talk about their dreams. You know, I'm in the car with my friend. I'm a passenger, and he's like, "Hey, man, I had this crazy dream." So, you know, blah blah. And then I remember my dream. And so I'm like, I tell him, and my friend, his name's Corey, was just sitting there while I was driving, and he's like, has his mouth open, like he couldn't believe what I was telling him. Because the day before, a FedEx guy, UPS guy, came to the house to deliver a package to one of my roommates. And the guy, we'd only have lived there for about 5 or 6 months. And the delivery guy asked him, he's like, "Hey man, whatever happened to the guy that lived here before?" And we're like, "I don't know." He's like, "Yeah, I used to have to deliver packages to him a lot of times." And he's like, I have a feeling that he died, or, you know, and so in my dream, that's who I was speaking to, or that's who I was communicating with, um, was him. And it felt like he had health issues. So I think that was kind of one reason that we connected a little bit. And it feels like it was like an accidental suicide by medication. Um, so anyways, you know, I had that dream. I had another dream in that house that was very strange, where somebody like jumped on my bed and ran off the bed. Um and I can't, there's a name for this kind of dream where you dream about your physical location, and when you wake up you're exactly in that location. That was kind of what happened there. The other really interesting experience I had was, it was only a couple years after this. Me and one of my exes. This is probably like 2005. We lived in this kind of old apartment that was. And this is Portland, Oregon, by the way. But we lived in this apartment that was like it's probably built in the 1920s, 30s, or something like that. So there was a lot of dips in the, you know, floor, and it was an old building, and really cool though. So um, my ex, who was from Florida, ironically, she had to go back home. And just to add, she was going through breast cancer, so it was a lot. You know, there was a lot of strong emotional stuff that was going on. But so anyway, she's gone. I'm just hanging out by myself, you know, like goofing off with music. And in our apartment, our living room, to the very right was the staircase that went down to the front door that we never used because we couldn't park over there. We always came through the back door. So we really never went down that stairway. And we used to put the cat box down there so he could go down there and, you know, it didn't stink or whatever. So anyways, I'm sitting in the living room, and, you know, it's like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And out of nowhere, I kind of get this emotion. Well, actually, sorry, let me back up a little bit. the day before, I'm just walking around the house doing normal stuff, and I start to hear this song, and it's a very common like song that the military used to whistle, and you would totally know what I'm talking about if you heard it. Um, so I'm hearing this sound, and the craziest thing is it's surrounding me. So, and not only that, but it was like directly above my head, so it was very strange because you almost can't tell where it's coming from. And then you start to think, well, maybe it's in my head, like maybe I'm not actually physically hearing this. So to say, that happened. And so I'm like, okay, that's kind of, that's strange. That next night, as I was talking about, I'm in the living room, and all of a sudden I start to have this kind of like emotional feeling. And me and Candace talked about this because I've tried to kind of like identify like where I'm, what my abilities are, I guess, in a certain way. And we kind of come to the conclusion I'm kind of like a physical empath in a way. And so, I start having this kind of emotional feeling, and I feel somebody by that little staircase hallway, and almost as if they're shy to talk to me. And then not only that, but I could sense other people as well. And or I call them people because the really only difference is they just don't have a body. They are just the same person. So, it kind of I don't want to say it's funny, but when you watch these shows and people are, hello, can you hear me? It's like they're just a person that you would meet in your regular life.
Mm.
So that night I was starting to have this feeling, emotional feeling, and I started speaking to someone that had passed on, and his name was Mike, and he was a veteran in I believe World War II. And unfortunately, the story was, and why he was hanging out was, he came back. When he came back from the war, his wife left him, and so he was kind of in this perpetual kind of loop of trying to resolve that. And so, he explained that to me, and more or less out of nowhere, for whatever reason, I was able to communicate with him and help him pass on, or just move on. And craziest thing was the next day I'm working on some music on my computer, and I have it right next to a window, and I had the window open, and we're on the second level, and these two older ladies downstairs had lived there for like 15 years, so they've been there for a long time. And I'm eavesdropping on this conversation through the window, and they're literally talking about they need to bring the psychic back to get the ghost out of the apartment. So I'm listening to this, and they have no idea I'm hearing this. I'm like, this is one of the like really important events in terms of confirming kind of what I was experiencing. So, that was a pretty significant thing. Another thing I wanted to add, and I think Vicky may have talked about it, was um, I've had a lot of, I guess you'd call them download type of experiences, where the communication was, and I guess this could be kind of related to the physical medium type thing, is how they was communicated to me is they would take parts of my memories and basically translate the feelings I had in those memories, so they could communicate by showing me different things I'd already experienced to kind of make a new message out of it. You know what I mean? Like if you're to like make a collage and make an entirely different picture from it. So they would communicate through me like that, or to me like that. But occasionally I felt like I would eavesdrop on something I wasn't supposed to hear. And this happened to me a few times where I was like in a lucid state, and it was like I was and this is the strangest thing, because it felt like I was like poking a hole into some kind of different dimension and like sticking my head through it. And I was hearing I was hearing discussions about the future, I guess. And the strange thing was, they would notice that once they figured out I was hearing this stuff, I would hear this incredible loud sound that sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. And it was so sharp that I could hear it in my ears. And when I, like I would startle and wake up, and I could still hear it ringing in my ears. And the crazy thing was, that sound was kind of like, it had some kind of effect that it would erase the detail of what I saw. Like, I'd have a general idea that something happened, but all the details were just gone. So, and this happened to me a handful of times. And so, those are a few things. There's a lot of other stuff. And, like going back to the guide, the bird person, it was a couple years ago when I had heard about the blue avians. I had never heard about that, ever.
It was just
And
by chance.
yep, just by chance. And that's exactly who what was communicating with me, because he had this
He
blue
almost ran off the road.
Yeah,
Seriously.
it was crazy. Like, I was blown away. I just couldn't believe it.
What color were the feathers?
Like a silver blue.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
it was, yeah, it was very, like, there's gradients too. Like, he was a little more silver on his chest, and that's one thing
Could
I
I?
remember very vividly, was he was enormous. Like, you could just, there was like this strength that you could just sense coming out of this being. And not only that, but kind of maybe like Vicky was saying, it was almost like you're intimidated, but at the same time you were comforted in some way. Like, you're in the presence of something that was incredibly powerful. So anyways, I just wanted to, add that too. And then I guess we could talk about what me and Candace saw.
Well, we've got 20 minutes left if you've got time for that.
Oh, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
What's that?
I wanted to say something real quick.
Oh, sure.
So when we first started the recording, and I'm sitting on the porch and it's broad daylight, there was an owl hooting very, very loudly before you started talking. It was great.
Real quick sidebar. Candy remembers this. When we first met, we're at her house in the backyard.
Oh my
This
God.
enormous owl comes out of nowhere, and what did it get? Like a squirrel or something? And then it just sat on this pole and looked at us for like 30 minutes.
And it was after John and I were talking about this subject, and what, and my parents have been in this house since like 2010, something like that, and we have never seen an owl here, ever. And this owl, I mean, it was massive. It was bigger than, Florida's got some big owls though, don't get me wrong, but it was just real interesting that is his figure, his shadow memory thing, and totem, whatever, follows him around since he was a kid, and it just appeared there larger than life, like you couldn't miss it, and it was staring. Like, it came up there like, I see you, I hear what you're talking about. And I know that sounds like so loony, but there is an intuition-based connection where you feel it resonate within you, and it meant something. I know it's going to be hard for people out there
Well,
that have an experience.
The Greys tend to use the owl as a projection to cover itself when it actually meets you. So I guess you're less afraid seeing something normal, that if it would show itself in its true form. That's why that's because a friend of mine, she's a Grey experiencer. Her son, when he was a child, would complain of all the damn clowns in the bedroom. He wanted the clowns in the bedroom to go away. So again, they use something that's less frightening to the child to
what was observing us, for sure. It was a very palpable feeling of being observed, the same way as when the craft came into our yard. You knew you were being observed. You knew it, just like when you're in the store and somebody's staring at you. You can feel it. You look over and you go, you meet eye to eye, and you're like, How long has this person been looking at me? It's that feeling, you know. We're all energetic beings.
Mhm.
You know, just some of it are more in tune than others, but you can feel that when something's observing you. Very
Okay.
similar with the owl.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So John, go ahead with the your version of the UFO encounter.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, so, like Candy was saying, March 9th, 2015, and, just like normal, we're in the backyard, just having a quick smoke break, sitting on the little stoop, and yeah, it wasn't entirely dark yet. It was still kind of dusk. And so I'm looking, basically that part of Tampa is a perfect grid. All the streets are either north, south, or east, west. They actually really don't deviate. I mean, really just that way. And so I'm looking to the east, and I see this strange, like, like I said, at first I thought they were balloons. They were solid black, like super black. And it, it triggered like in me that I knew something was off, because it was moving so slowly, and my brain's going, okay, they're balloons. Now it's moving so slowly that there's no, like, it is on this perfect trajectory, and like flight path, like it's not deviating at all. And when I first saw it, it literally looked like three, and I think we kind of saw it at different times, me and Candace, but when I saw it, it looked like three balloons stuck to each other. And there, it wasn't even a, the formation was really bizarre. It was like really haphazard. And as it's coming over our house, and it's, like I said, going east to west, and it's kind of going right down the alleyway. If you remember, Candy, it was literally like just going right down the alley. And
No, that's one of the
so,
reasons why it's so absurd. Because why in
yeah,
the
yeah,
world would it be going right? You know,
yeah.
it was absurd.
And yeah, and like, so it's kind, like I said, when I first saw it, very black, looked like three balloons stuck to each other. Now as it's coming more towards our yard and above our heads, it's slowly starting to illuminate. They start, and like Candy was saying, the way I described it was, if you were to take like a white seashell and like have a light behind it, it had this real warm glow. And then as it kind of started leaving our yard, it got brighter and brighter and brighter, and it
Oh,
had this
yeah.
kind of slow trajectory going up. And we continued to watch it for a long time. It was so bright, but then it just kind of either went too far and just faded out, or we're like, wow, that was crazy. We're just trying to process it. And like Candy was saying, she was pretty freaked out. She was right on me, just going, oh my god, what's going on? So
You better not walk away
we're
from
just,
me.
yeah, we're just blown away, like, because like, just to add too, the way me and Candy met was very interesting. Like, I have synchronicities all throughout my life, so things don't surprise me anymore. But I was working at a recording studio, and I had a UFO magazine, Open Minds, and I had my favorite candy bar. I took a picture of it and I put it on Facebook, and I said, hey, I'm on a break. She commented on it. So we met through our interests in these things.
Yeah.
So
And we don't
I
even
just
know
wanted
who
to add
added
that.
who. We really have no memory of adding each other,
Oh,
but we
yeah.
commented on this UFO magazine, and we're inseparable ever since. Like,
Yeah, it's wild. So sorry, I just a little sidetracks, but yeah, so this craft goes over our yard, and like Candy was saying, I mean, we could have thrown a rock at it. It was that
it
close.
was
I
so
mean,
close.
estimate it would be, yeah, it probably wouldn't have been more than like 70 feet in the air at the very most. So anyways,
Right. A
it's
little
going
larger
across
than
our
a
yard, it
basketball.
lights up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so it goes across our yard, lights up, and we watch it into the distance, and then we don't see it anymore. Anyways, we had brownies in the oven, ran inside to make sure they're not
Muffins.
burning, and Candy's like, oh my god, come out here, come in the backyard, oh my god. So I run out in the backyard, and sure enough, there are three orbs, and just like Candy said, You know, they came when they first kind of started, it was kind of slow, and then they went into formation. They got a little bit faster, and then I saw before they faded off, I saw two of them. Basically, like, it's wild. That's why it makes sense that they might be organic. But the two of them were like flying around each other, like almost like
Oh,
if you
it
could
was like the
envision, like,
DNA, like
yeah, if you could
undulating.
envision, like,
There was like
fish. Yeah, it was
fish.
strange. Yeah, it was like if you
It
ever
was
see
so
fish
weird.
swim in a stream and they swim by each other and do all this kind of, that's it. That's what
Right.
it was like.
It was like
It was
this.
incredible.
It
Yeah,
was so
exactly. Just like
weird. Like,
it
I
was
mean, it was
incredible.
totally organic. It was not like, I mean, and that's what we kept saying that night. I totally forgot about that part. It's like they were like fish in the ocean swimming around
Yeah.
each other, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was crazy. It was so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a vivid memory for me too. And you know,
They were alive. They were alive.
yeah, and this was actually just one of many things that happened in that time period.
Yeah.
So, and just to let you know too, when we contacted the MUFON investigator, his name's Dennis Force. So
And
he's,
Bill
ex-military.
Schroeder and Dennis Force.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, they looked into, satellite data, flight records, etc. That a week later, they got a report from St. Petersburg, Florida, that orbs were going southwest, and that's exactly where they're going, and that was that night. So he was confirming basically what we saw.
It was seen on the further down the
another
coast.
sighting. Yeah. So there's that confirmation. Then our friend Mike, who shot the video, this was only probably not more than a week after we had seen her.
It was like a few days, honestly.
Yeah,
it was
might
like
be just a few days.
boom,
So,
boom.
and I know exactly where he shot that video because he was at a little
Like by
party at this one very particular house that you always see in Ybor City. And so I know where he was looking. He was looking east too, and these were basically going, at this point, they were going northwest.
Down the strip,
And yeah, and like, he described to us, like, because he got his camera out at the kind of very end, but basically they were seeing kind of like these orbs following each other and blinking on and off at different times. And they said that was the strange part, was they were going so slowly, but they're going in perfect, like, equidistant, like, distance from each other. There's no deviation. It was like they were stuck together, but they were not, they were apart from each other. So, he shot the video. That was like Kenny was saying, that was only a couple of days after our sighting. Then,
I forgot.
like I said, I was working at a recording studio. I had some friends. One guy he was working with me. They were doing a band photo for the local newspaper, and it was during the day. And, they had a photographer from the paper, taking shots, blah, blah. The photographer's reviewing the photos through his camera, and he starts seeing this metallic object in several pictures. Yeah. And so they all were like, oh my gosh, looking at it, and only one of them was able to see it before it took off or just disappeared, more or less. Now, I tried to contact the photographer because they immediately, my friends, they knew, like, what had happened, because I told them, like, just a few days ago. Yeah, and Frank, my friend who saw it and was, in the photos and whatnot, he tells me right away. He's like, man, we saw this thing.
Gotta see this. I can't believe it. You gotta see what we caught. Like, he was stoked.
Yeah.
Like, real.
Yeah, and it really kind of bums me out, because I attempted to contact that photographer several times, and nothing. And I even asked Frank to, talk to him if he could, just because all this was going on with like a week.
Right.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, Candy, didn't our friend right down this Calvin, didn't he see something too?
Same week.
And he
came
ran
over
to our house, more or less.
He was freaking out, talking about all the colors that was on it, and it was not an aircraft, and he was flipped. I mean, like, he was so crazy, and he lives like 3 doors down from us on our same street. You know, we hang out just like neighbors, but he was so freaked out that he had to run and tell us immediately because we're the only people that he knew he could say something to, because we were always, you know, we weren't extroverted with our beliefs at that point, but the people that knew us closely, we weren't afraid to talk about what we saw to small groups. And so, I mean, he came over talking about what, like this big craft in the sky, and it was right over our street, very same trajectory, very similar, just a street over, and that it was flashing all these different colors, like a light show or something, right?
Yeah, well, and then I remember him saying that, you know, it would flash lights, but when it stopped flashing lights, it looked like a red, like crystal, almost kind of like the green emerald color that your brother saw.
Right.
It was almost like that, like a ruby, like, you know, like a red color of some sort. So
that it was
I
like
mean,
a crystal shape in the sky that was putting on a light show.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Like
Right,
something you would
exactly.
see it like Coachella or something. He was describing it to like some kind of crazy show you would see.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like Candy was saying, I mean, he literally, we were the first person people he came to tell.
I mean, his adrenaline
tell
rush was
somebody.
still going. He had just seen, I mean, like he was
Yeah, he
sweating,
just seen it.
and I mean, you know, his heart rate was boom, boom, boom. I mean, like we were outside just I'm like, we were usually in the backyard, not in the front yard. We just happened to be in the front yard, and he literally came from just 3 houses up the street where he saw it. And we were on the porch, you know, like we didn't see it, you know, but there's a lot of old trees in that neighborhood. It's one of the first neighborhoods ever settled in Florida, very old neighborhood. But I mean, you could feel his adrenaline coming off of him. He's sweating.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, guys, I'm gonna, you know, this is the end of the world. Like, he didn't say that, but that's the energy, you know, around it.
So we're gonna have to wrap it up. We're almost out of time, But yeah, seeing a UFO really changes your life, no doubt about it. And what I've seen, at least with all the other experiences, that the UFOs tend to show themselves to those they want to show themselves to. So that's something important. So so Vicky, Candy, and John, thank you so much. For being on.
Thank you.
And I really loved your stories. It's really fascinating. And I hope those watching that some of you resonated with what these awesome individuals said. And I'll see you guys next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.